We're talking QBs today. What should be the expectations for Anthony Richardson? And Joe Flacco is a solid insurance plan that we hope to never see. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, you guys get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. What is up, y'all? This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. And today we are starting a multi-part series going through the Colts roster. This is the time where the team is together. The draft is over. The big heavy lifting of free agency is done. So your 90-man roster is here. We're getting a look at it. We're going to go over it and what to kind of expect as mini camps get rolling and then ultimately training camp at the end of July. So got to start at the top with quarterbacks today. Anthony Richardson, he is back. He's on the field with his teammates. What should we expect in year two? Joe Flacco, very different player from Gardner Minshew, much older. But is he an upgrade? Hopefully it doesn't matter because hopefully we don't see him. And then you got some dark horses at the bottom of the roster. Can someone crack that QB3 spot? But we're obviously going to talk about AR5 first here, Zach. So Anthony Richardson, obviously only 4 games as a rookie. Very disappointing because he was a favorite of ours here leading into the draft. Got the wish, and then it was sourly taken away from us. But luckily, if there's any positive to it, the injury happened early in the year. He is back on the field. They're taking it smart with him, but he doesn't, the reins aren't really on there. So they're able to use their quarterback how they want to and, implement their scheme going forward how they want to with this young quarterback who missed most of his rookie year.
Yeah, and I think it was a really positive showing for him despite the injuries. I know a lot of us are, since we only really have the highlights to look back on, a lot of us are maybe getting a little bit too high on him, but I do think there is some good reason to be hopeful right now with Anthony Richardson. I mean, his first start against the Jaguars could have been better. Obviously, it was his first game starting in the NFL, really young quarterback. It could have been a better start, but each week after that we saw him start a game, it was better and better and better from him. I mean, we look at what he did against the Texans in those 3 series. He was able to score 2 touchdowns in that game. You go to that Rams game, a little bit slow in the first half, but leads a 23-point comeback in the second half and pushes that game to overtime, hitting a lot of big-time throws down the field and converting a lot of big-time opportunities. And then you get to that Titans game, and I really think that Titans game before the injury, he was really putting it together. He was making some really legit NFL reads as a passer and doing some really good things from the pocket and outside the pocket as well. Had a big 3rd and 16 throw to Josh Downs for 38 yards up the sideline. Did some great things there. So, I don't think we should be sitting here saying like our franchise quarterback is set. He's perfect. He's a Hall of Famer, better than Andrew Luck or anything like that. But I do think that we can sit here and say, you know what, there is hope going into this next season. Like, we saw some good progress from him. He just needs to be a little bit safer as a runner. There's going to be opportunities, even if the Colts pull the reins back a little bit and don't run him on design runs anymore, which I don't think is going to happen. That's still going to be part of the game for him. But even if they did pull the reins back, there's still going to be times he's going to get hit. These quarterbacks get hit a lot in the NFL. We see quarterbacks get hurt in the pocket, outside the pocket, and on the run. So it's not something about like, oh, we can just hide him and never let him get hit. He's going to take some hits, but he's got to be safe with the way he takes those hits. Look at what Lamar Jackson does. When he sees a hit coming that he doesn't need to take, he gets down. Look at what Jalen Hurts does. When he sees a hit coming that he doesn't need to take, he gets down. That's really the big thing for Anthony Richardson going into year 2 is knowing how to play safe, knowing the speed of the NFL and continuing to improve as a passer. But I think the optimism is well warranted right now for Colts fans. I think we're all excited to see him back out there. And every time the Colts media posts a clip of him throwing in training camp or throwing in OTAs that we're seeing right now, it's so exciting to see, man. It's so exciting to see him back out there. And And I'm pumped just for week 1, just to see him back on the football field again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We have media availability with practice on Wednesday, so I'm looking forward to getting to see him again. For me, it's been since the season. The thing I'm trying to lean into here is, a lot of quarterbacks don't start their rookie season, and they spend it on the sideline, so you kind of just treat it like that. The good news for him is he is physically back with his teammates and able to create on-field chemistry. But he's the craziness of pre-draft and being a rookie and all that is over. He is an entrenched NFL player now, going into the second season in this system. That's the other good thing. It's not a new head coach or anything. So the verbiage and all the intricacies, like they're getting into the fine details now. Like all the big stuff he had to learn is done. Like there's always things to learn and do and refresh, but like all that heavy lifting is done. Like he is a second-year player now. So that's definitely good. Leadership goes with that as well. That's a big thing that they're leaning into it, because he was a captain last year as a rookie. So other than the on-field stuff, everything else is going as according to plan. So to me, I think that's a really important thing, because so much of your success in the NFL is what's done on every other day except for Sunday. So for him, all that is right on target. And so that kind of leads me into the on-field expectations for this coming year. I think I've tossed over this so much of what to expect this offense to look like, because they obviously have all these tight ends coming back and are healthy. They have A.D. Mitchell now, Pittman, Pierce, Downs. Like all that passing group is another year together. But then you have Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, which is such an enticing thing. And I think Shane Steichen as a head coach, that he kind of makes things interesting as well, because he's not the type that fits players into schemes. He's not a square peg in a round hole kind of guy. And so consistency with this offense, I don't think is something we're going to be able to expect. I think it's going to be a different game plan all the time. Like, and we're not used to saying that. Like sometimes we're used to seeing coaches just trying to force things that aren't working. But Shane is so dynamic in that he's only going to try and do what's actually working and what his players are capable of doing. So I'm just really excited to see how Anthony as the quarterback evolves with his head coach. And, there may be some days he has to throw 35, 40 times and then 15 to 20 the next week, So I'm just intrigued to see how all that's going to go.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to touch a little bit on what you were saying with the off the field stuff, because I talked with my buddy Eric Turner of Cover One, who covers the Buffalo Bills, from back in 2018 with Josh Allen. Josh Allen started his rookie season. I believe he suffered an elbow injury halfway through his rookie season and missed about 6-7 weeks with that injury. And what Eric told me a couple times last year when I was talking to him was, that 6-week stretch where Josh Allen was out is where he learned the most about football, is when he got out there for a little bit, he saw the speed of the game, he felt what he had to feel, and then he got to do all the work behind the scenes. So then when he came back after that injury, he felt more prepared. And then obviously he carried it forward to his second and third years, where he broke out as this superstar quarterback. So just because Anthony Richardson missed time last year doesn't mean he wasn't still improving his craft off the field and really taking some things away from what he was doing out there. So yeah, I love to see the off-field stuff he's done, and hopefully we can see that performance kind of increase going forward this next season with the team. As for expectations, I'm with you. I think, as long as everyone stays healthy, that's obviously a huge part here, because this team never stays healthy. But as long as everyone's staying healthy going into the season, there's just the intrigue of having him and Jonathan Taylor in the same backfield for more than, 4 snaps last year, 3 snaps, whatever it was last season. Having those guys out there together would be great. Having Jelani Woods out there would be great. A.D. Mitchell with him is awesome, along with, Pierce and Pittman and Downs. I mean, there is great potential here. And then another year of Shane Steichen just finding his rhythm with this offensive system, finding his rhythm with this offensive line, with this quarterback in place. It just looks really good on paper going to the year. Now we just need to see that progression on the field. But again, Anthony Richardson, I think, is going to have a good year too. He just has to stay healthy. Just has to stay healthy. That's the number one thing going into this season. If he stays healthy, I think it's going to be a pretty big season. I'm not going to say some concrete prediction of like 5,000 yards passing or anything crazy like that. But I think with the potential with this offense and what Shane Steichen can do to isolate playmakers, I think he can have a really, really productive season as long as he stays healthy. Everything is there. Everything is there for him mentally, physically, and with the playmakers around him and with the head coach behind him. So I think we're going to see a pretty big season from Anthony Richardson as long as everyone stays healthy. That's the biggest thing right there. But coming up, guys, we're going to transition over to Joe Flacco talk. Look, we love Anthony Richardson, but it's time to get into comeback Joe talk right now. But first, it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Everybody, Pacers, Celtics, you guys know what we're doing here. We're putting all of our money on the Pacers, because if they can even win one game in this next series, we're going to make a ton of cash on FanDuel and other great sites. So make sure you're going to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Make sure you put all your money again on the Indiana Pacers. We're riding this high, hopefully to an NBA Finals berth as well. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Jake. So we're here talking about the backup quarterback. Again, last year we made a lot of jokes about the backup quarterback, saying, you know what, we like Gardner Minshew. He's fun. He's a cool player, but we never want to see him on the football field. And unfortunately, we saw him for way more than what we should have last year.
Pretty early.
Pretty early. Now, I do think this is a different kind of animal than Gardner Minshew, where I'm not going to sit here and say anything bad about Minshew. Minshew played admirably. He got the Colts into a position to make the playoffs. It just came up a little bit short in that final game. But Joe Flacco, I'm going to lose some people with this, but resume-wise and how it is with quarterbacks, he's a fringe Hall of Fame candidate one day. Really with the way it is as quarterbacks getting into the Hall of Fame, he's a fringe Hall of Fame candidate, a guy who, Super Bowl MVP, has that legendary playoff run, has all the accumulation stats, and then this past year comes off his couch and leads the Browns to a 4-2 record, over 300 yards passing per game, and gets them into the playoffs. Just a fantastic game, or fantastic stretch he had last season. So I think on paper, Flacco is an upgrade over Gardner Minshew, because you don't have to hide Flacco as much as you had to hide Gardner. Gardner, it was, we have to do the RPO stuff. We have to do the quick game. We have to get the ball out of his hands. We have to keep the Colts in front at all times, or it's going to be turnover city, or it's going to be just a really ineffective thing, and it's going to lead to blowouts. With Flacco, it's very much like, look, he's going to throw a lot of picks, but he's going to throw a lot of touchdowns and a lot of yards as well. He's going to chuck it down the field. We saw it with that Browns team last year, where at the end of the day, he was just ripping it when he got on the field. He didn't care who he was throwing it to, but it led to success for that Browns offense. So I think overall it's an upgrade over Minshew, because it's more offensive potential for your team, rather than just kind of being that baseline of low and just hoping that things can go right in front of Minshew.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. It's, to me, I look at it and it doesn't even have to be exciting, but like the simple things, like what was complained about with Carson Wentz, like just making the layups, like just making the routine plays be successful, like getting yourself into more manageable situations on second and third down. Like he ripped it a lot with the Browns, but like he was playing catch up and he was working in a simplistic manner, because he didn't have all that background with them throughout the whole offseason. But like, just, I don't think he's going to have to do that now, because number one, Taylor is back and healthy. That's not really something the Browns had much of last year. So he's going to have a run game with a solid offensive line and a decent group of pass catchers. But just like, things get so chaotic and so lopsided. And like you saw against games like Atlanta, Cincinnati, where the offense could do nothing, but when the routine just isn't even being successful. And a quarterback like Flacco, with the exception of last year when he was just ripping it, like the guy can move the chains a little bit and make the layups and things like that, and just keep an offense moving for long enough for your playmakers to be the ones that decide how the drive goes, and you have Michael Pittman Jr. that can do that. A.D. Mitchell, we're going to see how that goes. Josh Downs is a guy that can get really creative and do a lot of things with options. That's actually one I don't want to see Flacco play, but I kind of feel like Downs and Flacco would have like a really good connection, as much as you don't want to see it. But no, that's something I'm more intrigued for. And the productivity speaks for itself. You mentioned, including the playoff game, 4-2, over 320 yards passing per game in 6 games as a 40-year-old quarterback. It's crazy. 2.3 touchdowns per game as well. There were plenty of turnovers and sacks, but like that's just what you get with YOLO ball, and that can be successful. Like I think a guy like Shane Steichen could police that a little bit. Like I like how that they would probably work hand in hand. But there's also the part where he can help keep things simple and translate for Anthony. Like Anthony had a veteran with Gardner, yes, but like it's not like Gardner's been in the league like 8 years. He's had a couple of years of starting experience, so he hasn't seen everything. But now the guy who's showing him the ropes is someone who has seen everything. He's won a Super Bowl. He's won Comeback Player of the Year, Super Bowl MVP. Like I think just translating what you're seeing and keeping things simple is super, super valuable. I mean, because you went from Sam Ehlinger and Gardner Minshew, who are your veterans, but still kind of young guys in their own right, to you're having a real OG now as your example in the quarterback room.
Yeah, and one thing I think we need to add to this is, because I know we're going to get a lot of comments about this, is Joe Flacco's not coming in here to be the mentor. He's always been very clear about that. He's not the mentor for a younger quarterback. And that's perfectly fine, because he doesn't need to be this guy where in everything he does, he has to tiptoe around a young quarterback and say, hey, by the way, I am doing this. Like it doesn't need to be this mentorship of come here, I'm going to hold you, I'm going to baby you and walk you through everything. It can be something as simple as, oh, Joe comes into the facility at this time every day, and this is his routine every single day. He comes in, watches this, does this, reps this, and it doesn't even need to be any spoken words between the two. Just seeing what Flacco does can be enough to rub off on a young quarterback. So yes, I know there's going to be a lot of quotes and stuff thrown around about the Flacco not being a mentor type and him not wanting to be a mentor, but simply having that presence in the locker room itself and being around a player who's done it for so long and has had success, some success in the NFL, that rubs off on other players, and that can rub off on younger guys. I mean, I know Mike Mitchell gets a lot of credit for what he did back in, I want to say 2018, 2019 with that Colts secondary, where he came in as a veteran and really rubbed off on a lot of the younger players and took them under his wing. But it doesn't always have to be that way. Again, just having that guy around and seeing what his routines are and his process is enough in some cases. So at the end of the day with Flacco, you get a guy in the room who has a relationship with Shane Steichen, much like with Gardner Minshew last year, who's coming off a very explosive and fun season with the Cleveland Browns. He's a backup quarterback who is capable of winning a game or two if he only needs to start a game or two. And he's also good enough to where if your starter goes down, he can keep your team competitive and can keep your young players developing while your starting quarterback is still recovering, which again, it's disaster season if we have to go through another whole year with your young quarterback missing, significant time. But aside from that disaster scenario, again, you have a guy who can win that game or two if he has to. You have that guy who can show the right routines to young players. So I do think this is a good signing for the Colts. Again, just having that capable veteran who has experience with your head coach and just knows what he has to do. I mean, there's no downside to having that kind of player in your locker room. So we'll see look, again, I hope he never plays a snap for the Colts. I hope I never see his name on box scores or anything with the Colts this upcoming season. But if it comes down to it and they need a quarterback for a game or two, if you're looking at backups across the league, I can't think of one like many better ones than what Flacco was able to do last year with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and you had talked about, clarifying Flacco as a mentor thing. It's not like he's some grumpy old man that's saying like, I don't want the young players around me. He's just real about it. Like he's not going to like be on someone constantly to like, here's how I do this and this and this.
Right.
He's very much lead by example. And he's talked about before, like in the quarterback room, you're all very close talking to each other. This is how I see this thing, this, that, and the other. It's more about the young player, approaching Joe. That player has to want it himself. And then he's very receptive to reciprocating that information. And that's why I talk confidently about it, is because Anthony is that type of player. I have no worries. Like Anthony is almost annoying to those he's trying to get information from because he wants to learn to be better. So that's why I think that relationship will work so well. But yeah, I think a lot of people have taken Flacco's stuff and kind of run with it, but that's just not how it is. It's not a Brett Favre thing. He's very receptive to it, but like the young guy has to want it. Right. And that's why I think it works well. But coming up, QB3 is a thing. There's an emergency quarterback thing. You got Sam Ehlinger, who's been around for a long time, but now you've got a couple young, potentially exciting guys maybe nipping at his heels. So how will that go in training camp? Buying tickets to events can be frustrating. Let's face it. That's not part of the fun of the event, especially if you aren't sure if the seats are good, if you can't find last-minute deals or tickets or anything like that. But with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat beforehand, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets or tickets for any of your entertainment. Obviously, you got Pacers Celtics coming up. The Fever are a big thing. Caitlin Clark's about to play her second home game. The Colts coming up. There's plenty of games. Go back to last week. We talked about some of the biggest games on their schedule. Dude, there's even like little detailed things. Like I was looking at it. The Indianapolis Indians, the farm team for the Pirates, they have a princess night coming up in a couple weeks. My daughter, very big into princesses. Because I saw it on Gametime, I am probably going to go ahead and take advantage of that now. So Gametime can really, look through there, find anything that you might want. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% off of buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever. They have their flash deals. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Seating zone deals as well. Save even more when you choose a section, and then you let Gametime choose the seats for you. They have their all-in pricing, which means toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, because everyone's been there. You're going to spend $25 on a ticket. By the time you leave, it's $75 with all the convenience stuff. Views from your seat. Again, get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And then, of course, the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% off of the difference from where you found better tickets somewhere else. So again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Zach. So what everyone's been waiting for, QB3 talk. We got Slingin' Sammy Ehlinger, Keaton Slovis, and Jason Mr. Bean. And if I'm not mistaken, Keaton Slovis was slinging balls to Michael Pittman at USC, right? So he's been around for a hot minute.
Keaton Slovis was, what year was it? So throwing to Michael Pittman Jr. would have been 2019, 2018, maybe? 2018, 2019, whatever year it was. If you did a super early, like mock 2023 NFL draft or whatever, after that year, he would have been the first overall pick, because that rookie, that debut season as a freshman at USC was fantastic. Now, he threw almost half of his career college touchdowns in that one season, and he started for like 5 years in college. So that's the concern right there, and why he made it to the Colts as an undrafted free agent. But Keaton Slovis, man, if you can somehow get a little bit of that first season where he was throwing to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Michael Pittman Jr. at USC, I mean, this is a steal right here. If you could just go back 4 years, though, 5 years, whatever it was, you can get an absolute steal with Keaton Slovis. But yeah, he's been slinging it for a while.
But no, 4.5 tested very well athletically at the combine. Has he, I mean, you're more familiar with his game than me. Was he ever used that way collegiately?
No, not at
okay.
all.
I didn't think
remotely.
So, which is why it was so surprising. Everyone's like, oh, he's got it like this. Okay.
Yeah. Not a chance. Not a runner. I think he had like negative 200 yards rushing in his college career or something like that. So yeah.
So he's got what you would call straight line speed, not escapability. Okay.
well, at college they count sacks as negative rushing yards. So there were a couple runs in there, obviously, but it's nothing like Jason Bean. It's not even what Ellinger was like in college either, where those guys were used running the ball a little bit more. Slovis was a pure pocket passer that tested really well in the offseason. But I do think this is a fascinating QB3 battle because the Colts were pretty adamant on trying to find, I don't want to say replacement for Sam Ellinger last year, but they wanted to find like a practice squad quarterback that could move a little bit. They wanted more athleticism there. Like Ellinger is a surprisingly nimble athlete. Like I'm not saying he's a bad athlete by any means, but he looks faster on the field than what he tested and what he kind of has like raw athletic ability. Like he's kind of just really spry and hard to tackle really when it comes to the actual thing. But guys like Bean and even Slovis with how he tested, like they're legit burners. Like Bean ran like a 4.5, but he's an all-state track guy in high school. Like he's someone who it was crazy that he ran a 4.5. Like it should have been low 4.4s to high 4.3s when you watch him in college. Like he is legit fast. So these guys bring a little bit more of that speed element where Ellinger, he's mobile for what he is, but he's not like this absolute burner, like elite athlete. These two guys are legit athletes on either on testing or on film.
Yeah, so they have Bean listed at wide receiver as well. So we're really right now it's all projection. Like I think he could sneak his spot onto the roster or practice squad, whatever, because he has that versatility. But I just don't think until we get to training camp and we see how they actually use him, like if he's working exclusively with the receivers, like that'll tell us everything we need to know. But he is intriguing enough to where like I would give him an early seat on the practice squad. There's just so much you could do with a guy like that. And again, if they can make it work from the quarterback position, like they know how much of an X factor that is, where the quarterback is like a much better athlete than half of the defense he's facing. Like that just turns plays totally on their head. So I think if they can get some good looks out of him, they'll probably give him some things sparingly at quarterback. But yeah, I think we'll definitely know by the first week or so of training camp how he's going to be used.
Yeah, and a big thing with Jason Bean too is there might not be a player on this roster, like that's coming into this roster, I should clarify, that Chris Ballard is more familiar with, because his son is the third string quarterback at Kansas, or going to be the backup quarterback. Chris Ballard's son is a quarterback at Kansas. So his son has been at Kansas, I think, the last 2 years. Obviously, they were recruiting him before that. So do you know who's watched a lot of Kansas football games in these last couple of years? Is Chris Ballard. And he's heard a lot about Jason Bean from his son, probably, is Chris Ballard. So he's very familiar with what Jason Bean can bring to this team. Again, undrafted free agent. If they were really sold on him, they probably would have spent a draft pick on him. But just seeing what he can do as either a quarterback or as a wide receiver or as a practice squad guy that can be kind of your scout team guy that can emulate the Lamar Jacksons and stuff in practice, I think that can bring some value to the team. But ultimately, I think when you're looking at QB3, I think it's Ellinger versus Slovis. I think Slovis has a legit chance to beat out Ellinger because when you're looking at this team, or when you're looking at the staff, they're not really tied to Ellinger in any meaningful way. They haven't played him in serious games. They barely gave him any reps in the preseason last year. They're not super, super tied to the quarterback that is Sam Ellinger, where Slovis is the guy they're bringing in that's new, fresh, did a lot of RPO stuff at the college level as well, just like Ellinger, but again, just a newer face in there. So I do think it is Slovis versus Ellinger for that final quarterback spot, where Bean is going to be more of your weapon on the practice squad that maybe can make some progress throughout the year. But I think it's going to be Ellinger versus Slovis, and that's the real battle at this quarterback position this offseason.
It's tough. Sam is always a good summer player, and despite the lack of arm strength, the guy loves to rip it.
He does. He is a fun play. You know what? Sam Ellinger has always proven us wrong. He's proven us wrong for multiple years on this podcast, so I'm not going to count him out. I can never count out Sam Ellinger at this point after I made my joke about him a couple years ago about the strong gust of wind. So.
I was just thinking about that. I was like, after we did our little either-or thing, and you said Sam versus strong gust of wind.
Yeah, throwback there to when we had much fewer listeners here. Sam Ellinger versus a strong gust of wind. You know what? Sam has grown on me. I'm not just here to cut him. I mean, he has been everything you could ask for out of a 6th-round pick. He's come in, he's done his job. He's consistently earned a spot on the roster for multiple years. I respect the guy. I really, really respect a player that can stick to a roster like that after being a day 3 pick. So we'll see if, again, he has that Ashton Dulin in him where he can survive every test thrown his way, like Dulin always did, and earn a second contract with the team. But yeah, we'll see what Ehlinger can do here going forward in the training camp. But if you guys don't already, make sure you are following us on @LockedOnColts, @JakeArthur and @Zach Hicks too for more Sam Ehlinger hot takes on Twitter. That's the most important place to find all of those takes there. We're going to be coming back to you guys tomorrow with the running back conversation, talking about Jonathan Taylor and the other guys in this running back backfield, and also discussing whether the Colts should add an outside face to that group. But to find that episode, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews. And again, we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.